Arizona Territory, 1872. The sun hung mercilessly in the cloudless sky, beating down on Mia Thompson's shoulders as she hauled water from the well to the small garden behind the ranch house. Sweat trickled down her neck, dampening the collar of her faded blue dress. 2 years had passed since she'd sworn never to shed another tear for him, but the desert had a way of preserving memories like dried flowers, brittle but intact, waiting for the smallest breath to scatter them. Mia paused, setting down the bucket to wipe her brow with her sleeve. The Thompson ranch sat nestled against the foothills, a modest spread compared to some, but her father Samuel had built it from nothing after moving west from Pennsylvania. The land was harsh but honest, demanding everything and promising nothing in return, much like love. "Mia, lunch is nearly ready," called Eleanor, her stepmother, from the porch. "Coming," Mia replied, her voice carried away by the hot wind that swept across the yard, stirring dust devils that danced briefly before dissolving into nothing. At 22, Mia had grown into a woman whose quiet strength belied the fire that once burned within her. Her honey-brown hair was pulled back in a practical knot, her skin sun-kissed despite her efforts to stay covered. Only her eyes, deep blue like the twilight sky, betrayed a depth of feeling she'd fought to bury. Those same eyes that had once looked up at the stars while lying beside Lahin, discovering a universe of possibility in whispered promises. Inside the ranch house, Samuel Thompson sat at the head of the table, his weathered face a map of hard years and harder decisions. At 53, he commanded respect throughout the territory, a rancher who'd survived raids, drought, and the changing tides of politics. Beside him sat Eleanor, his second wife of 5 years, a kind woman from Tucson, who had helped soften the edges of his grief after Mia's mother died. "Cattle prices are dropping again," Samuel announced as Mia took her seat. "Right from the double bar is thinking of selling out. Says the railroad will change everything anyway." "Maybe that's for the best," Eleanor suggested. "The territory is changing." Samuel grunted, slicing into the beef on his plate. "Some things shouldn't change." Mia kept her eyes on her food, knowing her father's words carried more weight than mere business. She felt his gaze on her, as if he could still see the ghost of the defiant girl who had once stood before him, tears streaming down her face as she declared she loved a man, an Apache man, named Lahin. "I heard McCreary's bringing in more hands," Eleanor said, changing the subject. "They're expanding north." "Fools," Samuel muttered. "That's Chiricahua territory." Some lessons are learned the hard way. At the mention of the Apache, Mia's hand tightened around her fork. Memories surged unbidden, the feel of Lahin's fingertips tracing the curve of her cheek, the warmth of his skin against hers as they sat by the river, his voice low and musical as he taught her words from his language, words of belonging, of earth and sky, of a love that transcended the boundaries drawn by men. "Mia, are you feeling well? You've barely touched your food." Eleanor's concerned voice broke through her thoughts. "I'm fine," Mia replied, forcing a small smile. "Just tired from the heat." Samuel's eyes narrowed slightly. "Perhaps you should rest this afternoon instead of riding out to check the south pasture." "I'll be fine, Father," Mia insisted, her tone revealing a hint of the stubborn spirit that had never truly been extinguished. "The cattle need to be moved to the lower water." After lunch, Mia escaped to the stable, finding solace in the familiar routine of saddling her horse, a dapple-gray mare named Silver. The stable smelled of hay and leather, a comforting constant in a world that had shattered and reformed around her. She led Silver out into the yard, squinting against the glare of the afternoon sun. As she mounted, Eleanor appeared at the kitchen door. "Be careful, Mia. There have been reports of strangers near Whispering Creek." Mia nodded, her throat suddenly dry. Whispering Creek, where she and Lahin had first met, where the water sang over smooth stones and cottonwoods provided shade from the relentless sun, where his fingers had entwined with hers, dark against light, strong against soft, as he told her stories of his people beneath a canopy of stars. "I'll stay clear," she lied, already knowing her path would lead her there, drawn by a force stronger than reason. The ride across the rangeland calmed her, the rhythmic movement of the horse beneath her a meditation of sorts. She passed scattered cattle grazing on the sparse vegetation, their hides dusty from the dry earth. In the distance, the mountains stood like sentinels, purple against the horizon. Mia followed the fence line south, checking for breaks that might allow cattle to stray or predators to enter. The work was solitary but purposeful, giving her mind the freedom to wander while her hands remained busy. As she approached Whispering Creek, the landscape changed subtly, more green, more life sustained by the precious water. She dismounted, leading Silver to drink while she surveyed the area. It was here, almost exactly 3 years ago, that she had come upon him unexpectedly. She had been 18, full of restlessness and curiosity, venturing farther from the ranch than her father would have approved. Lahin had been fishing, standing ankle-deep in the creek, so still and focused, he seemed part of the landscape itself. When he turned, sensing her presence, their eyes had met across the water, his dark and wary, hers wide with surprise, and something else she couldn't name. Now, Mia knelt by the water's edge, dipping her fingers into the cool current. The same water, always moving, always changing, yet somehow the same. A sound, the soft crunch of earth beneath a cautious foot, made her freeze. The hair on the back of her neck rose as a shadow fell across the ground beside her. Mia. Her name spoken in that voice she'd tried so desperately to forget. Deep, slightly accented, carrying echoes of a language older than the territory itself. Mia rose slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs as she turned to face him. And there he stood, as if conjured from her memories. Lahin, tall and lean, his black hair longer now, his copper skin marked with a new scar across his left cheekbone. His eyes, dark as the night sky, held hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "You shouldn't be here," she managed, her voice betraying none of the chaos within. Her eyes went cold, a defense against the flood of emotions threatening to drown her. "My father—" "I know the risk," Lahin interrupted, taking a step closer. "I've been watching the ranch for days." "Why?" The word escaped her lips, sharp as flint. Lahin's expression shifted, a flash of pain quickly masked. "I know I hurt you," he said, the words hanging in the space between them like smoke. "I left without a word, without explanation." "You disappeared," Mia replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "For 2 years. Not a word, not a sign that you were even alive." "I had no choice," Lahin said, his hands clenching at his sides as if physically restraining himself from reaching for her. "There is always a choice," Mia countered, the ice in her eyes spreading to her voice. But despite the coldness of her gaze, her treacherous heart raced at his proximity, at the familiar scent of sage and leather that clung to him, at the memory of what those hands felt like against her skin. "Not always," Lahin said quietly. "Not when the choice is between your life and my honor." Before Mia could respond, the distant sound of hoofbeats carried on the wind. Panic flashed across Lahin's face. "I must go, but I will find you again." His eyes held hers, intense and urgent. "There is more at stake than you know, Mia. More than us." And then he was gone, disappearing into the brush as silently as he had appeared, leaving Mia standing by the creek, her composure finally cracking as a single tear traced its way down her cheek. The hoofbeats grew louder, and Mia hastily wiped away the evidence of her weakness. Silver nickered softly as a rider appeared, James McCreary, the son of their neighboring rancher, his chestnut gelding kicking up dust as he approached. "Miss Thompson," he called, tipping his hat. "Didn't expect to find you out this way." Mia forced a smile, hoping the flush in her cheeks would be attributed to the heat. "Just checking fences, Mr. McCreary." James dismounted, his tall frame casting a long shadow in the late afternoon light. At 26, he was considered one of the most eligible bachelors in the territory, with his father's wealth and ambition coupled with a charm that had most young women in the area sighing as he passed. "Call me James, please," he said, his smile revealing straight white teeth. "We've known each other too long for formalities." Mia nodded, glancing nervously at the spot where Lahin had disappeared. "What brings you this far south?" "Looking for strays," James replied, though his eyes suggested other interests. "And hoping for pleasant company, which I've fortunately found." He stepped closer, and Mia instinctively backed toward Silver. "I should be getting back," she said. "Father will worry." "Allow me to escort you," James offered, already moving to help her mount. Mia hesitated, torn between the need to be alone with her thoughts and the danger of refusing a neighborly gesture. "That's kind of you," she finally said, accepting his assistance. As they rode back toward the Thompson ranch, James filled the silence with talk of cattle prices and territorial politics. Mia responded with appropriate nods and murmurs, but her mind remained by the creek, replaying Lahin's words. "I know I hurt you." The simplicity of the statement belied its weight, he knew, and he had come back. But why now? What had changed? And what had he meant by "more at stake than you know"? The sun was low on the horizon when they reached the ranch house. Samuel stood on the porch, his expression darkening at the sight of James McCreary riding beside his daughter. "Thompson," James called in greeting as they approached. "McCreary," Samuel replied, his voice carefully neutral. "What brings you to our doorstep?" James dismounted smoothly. "Happened upon your daughter checking fences. Thought it proper to see her safely home." Samuel's eyes shifted to Mia, who avoided his gaze as she slid from Silver's back. "Thoughtful of you," he said to James, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Would you stay for supper, Mr. McCreary?" Eleanor called from the doorway, ever the gracious hostess. "I'd be honored, ma'am," James replied with a winning smile. As they moved inside, Samuel caught Mia's arm, holding her back. "Where exactly did you encounter young McCreary?" he asked, his voice low. "Whispering Creek," Mia answered truthfully, meeting her father's gaze with practiced composure. Samuel's eyes narrowed. "I thought you understood that area was to be avoided." "The cattle needed water," Mia replied, the lie coming easily after years of protecting her heart. Samuel studied her face for a long moment. "There's been talk of Apache moving through the territory again," he finally said. "If you see anything, anyone, you tell me immediately." "Understood?" Mia nodded, her face a mask of filial obedience. "Yes, father." Inside, the oil lamps cast a warm glow over the simple dining room. James sat at the table, charming Eleanor with compliments on the house. Mia took her seat, acutely aware of the empty space inside her chest where something vital had once lived, something that had stirred back to life at the sound of Lahin's voice. "Beautiful night," James remarked as Eleanor served the meal. "Clear as crystal. You can see every star." Just like the night everything changed, Mia thought, remembering how the stars had seemed to bear witness to her surrender, to the moment when Lahin's lips first touched hers and the world had shifted on its axis. The meal progressed with polite conversation, but beneath the surface currents of tension swirled. Samuel watched James with the wary eye of a father who knew the intentions of young men. James watched Mia with undisguised interest, and Mia watched the darkness beyond the window, wondering if somewhere out there Lahin was watching too, waiting for a chance to explain what had torn them apart and what had brought him back into the dangerous territory of her heart. Later, as she lay in bed listening to the night sounds of the desert, Mia's mind returned to that fateful summer 3 years ago. Each clandestine meeting with Lahin had been a revelation, not just of passion, but of perspective. He had shown her the desert through different eyes, teaching her to read the land like a book written in a sacred language. The tracks of animals, the patterns of stars, the whispers of wind through canyon walls, all held meanings beyond what she had been raised to see. "Your people build fences," he had told her once, his voice soft in the gathering dusk. "Mine follow the patterns already written on the earth." She had leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "And where do I belong?" she had asked. "Between fences or beneath stars?" He had turned her face to his thumb tracing the curve of her lower lip. "You belong wherever your spirit finds freedom," he'd said. "Mine found it in you." Now staring at the ceiling of her bedroom, Mia wondered what freedom truly meant. The fence lines of the ranch marked boundaries of property, of safety, of the life her father had built. But they also marked limitations, of possibility, of choice, of love. Outside her window, an owl called into the darkness. Somewhere beyond the fences, beyond the boundaries that separated one world from another, Lahin was out there. And despite the walls she had built around her heart, despite the ice she had cultivated in her gaze, something inside her had thawed at his words. "I know I hurt you." Simple words that acknowledged what others had tried to deny, that what had existed between them was real, that the pain of its loss was real, that she was entitled to the anger that had sustained her these past 2 years. Mia turned onto her side, curling her body around the question that burned in her mind. What had forced him to leave? And what force could possibly be strong enough to bring him back, knowing the danger he faced in Thompson territory. Sleep eluded her as the night deepened, stars wheeling overhead in their ancient patterns, telling stories she had once begun to learn from a man who had disappeared like morning mist and had now returned, carrying secrets as vast as the desert itself. The following morning dawned with a strange stillness, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Mia rose early, dressing quickly in a simple brown skirt and white blouse. Her fingers worked automatically, pinning her hair in a practical style that kept it off her neck in the heat. Downstairs she found her father already at the table, a cup of coffee steaming before him, and a frown creasing his weathered face. "You're up early," he remarked, watching her pour her own cup. "Couldn't sleep," Mia admitted, sitting across from him. The coffee was strong and bitter, jolting her fully awake. Samuel studied her for a moment. "McCreary's boy seems taken with you." Mia stared into her cup. "He's taken with the idea of joining our ranches through marriage," she replied, surprising herself with her bluntness. A ghost of a smile touched Samuel's lips. "Sharp as your mother," he said, the rare mention of his first wife hanging in the air between them. "But he's not wrong about the advantages. The McCrearys have water rights we could use. Is that all marriage is to you? Water rights and boundary lines?" The question slipped out before Mia could stop it, a remnant of the passionate girl she had once been. Samuel's eyes hardened. "In this territory, marriage is survival. Your mother understood that." "And love?" Mia challenged, her voice quiet but steady. "Love," Samuel echoed, setting down his cup with deliberate care. "Love is a luxury for those who've already secured their survival." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I loved your mother, Mia, but that love wouldn't have meant anything if I couldn't protect her, provide for her." Mia looked away, unable to bear the sudden vulnerability in her father's expression. For a moment she glimpsed the young man he must have been, bringing his eastern bride to this unforgiving land, determined to carve out a place where they could build a future together. "I know, Father," she said softly. Samuel cleared his throat, the moment passing. "The Prescott stage was robbed yesterday. Army thinks it might be renegades." Mia's head snapped up. "Apache?" "That's the story they're spreading," Samuel replied, his tone making it clear he had his doubts. "Convenient for those who want an excuse to push the reservation boundaries further west." Before Mia could respond, Eleanor entered the kitchen, her face pale with worry. "Samuel, Jeremiah's here. Says there's trouble at the north boundary." Samuel rose immediately, grabbing his hat from the hook by the door. "What kind of trouble?" "Cattle dead. 6 of them." Eleanor wrung her hands in her apron. He says it looks like a warning." Samuel's expression darkened. "Stay inside today," he ordered, looking at both women. "Both of you. I'll send Miguel to watch the house." After he strode out, Eleanor sank into a chair, her usual composure shaken. "Things were supposed to be getting better," she murmured. "With the treaty with the reservation system," Mia placed a hand over her stepmother's. "What exactly did Jeremiah say?" Eleanor shook her head. "Just that the cattle were killed, but not taken, left where they fell. And there was some kind of marking." Mia's mind raced. Killing without taking the meat was wasteful, something no Apache would do under normal circumstances. And markings could mean anything. Tribal signs, warnings, or something meant to be interpreted as such by people already looking for an excuse for conflict. "I need to go," Mia said suddenly, rising. "But your father said—" "I need to check on Silver," Mia interrupted, already moving toward the door. "I won't be long." Outside, the ranch was a flurry of activity. Men on horseback gathered near the main corral, rifles visible in their saddle holsters. Samuel stood with Jeremiah, his foreman, gesturing toward the north while other hands prepared to ride out. Mia slipped into the stable unnoticed, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. If there was trouble involving Apache, Lahin might be in danger. She needed to warn him to understand what was happening. She saddled Silver quickly, her movements efficient from years of practice. Leading the mare out the back of the stable, she mounted and rode south away from the commotion, planning to circle around to reach Whispering Creek without being seen. The morning heat intensified as she rode, the landscape shimmering with rising waves of hot air. Silver moved steadily beneath her, seeming to sense the urgency in Mia's posture. They crossed open rangeland, then entered a narrow arroyo that would provide cover until they reached the creek. The sound of water flowing over stone reached her before the creek came into view. Mia slowed Silver to a walk, her eyes scanning the surrounding vegetation for any sign of movement. The cottonwoods cast dappled shadows on the ground, making it difficult to distinguish shapes among the patterns of light and dark. "Lahin," she called softly, feeling exposed and vulnerable. "Are you here?" Silence answered her, broken only by the gentle murmur of the creek and the occasional call of a bird. Mia dismounted, tying Silver's reins loosely to a branch low enough that the horse could still drink from the water. "Lahin," she called again, more insistently. A twig snapped behind her, and Mia whirled, her heart in her throat. But instead of Lahin's tall figure, she found herself facing James McCreary, his expression a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "Miss Thompson," he said, touching the brim of his hat, "seems we keep meeting in unexpected places." Mia struggled to compose herself, conscious of how strange her presence must appear. "Mr. McCreary, I was just checking the water level." James's gaze moved past her, scanning the creek and the surrounding brush. "Alone, when your father's men are all riding north?" "I needed to clear my head," Mia said, the half-truth sticking in her throat. James dismounted, tying his horse near Silver. "I heard about your cattle," he said, approaching her with a deliberately casual air that set Mia's nerves on edge. "6 dead, marked with paint. Red handprints, they say." Mia's brow furrowed. "Red handprints?" "Apache sign," James said, now standing close enough that Mia could smell the tobacco on his clothes. Or meant to look like it. "The Apache don't waste meat," Mia replied, before she could stop herself. "Especially not in times of scarcity." James's eyebrows rose. "I seem well informed about Apache customs, Miss Thompson." Mia took a step back, suddenly aware of how isolated they were. "It's common knowledge." "Is it?" James studied her face with uncomfortable intensity. "Just as it's common knowledge that 3 summers ago, a certain young lady from a respectable ranch family was seen meeting with an Apache man by this very creek." Blood drained from Mia's face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." James took a step closer. "I think you know exactly who's behind these cattle killings. I think you might even be helping him." "That's absurd," Mia protested, anger replacing her fear. "Why would I help anyone harm my father's livelihood?" James shrugged, his eyes never leaving hers. "Love makes people do foolish things, Miss Thompson, even betray their own kind." "My own kind?" Mia repeated, disgust coloring her tone. "Your father built something here," James said, gesturing broadly to encompass the land around them. "My father, too. We're bringing civilization to this territory. Law, order, progress. The Apache. They're the past. A dying way of life. And that justifies taking everything from them," Mia challenged, unable to hide her feelings any longer. A slow smile spread across James's face. "So, there is fire beneath that proper exterior." I wondered. He stepped closer, backing Mia against the trunk of a cottonwood. "Tell me, Miss Thompson, what exactly is your relationship with the Apache called Lahin?" The sound of his name on James's lips sent a jolt of fear through Mia. Don't lie," James interrupted, placing one hand on the tree trunk beside her head. "You've been seen 3 years ago, and again yesterday, right here." Trapped between James and the tree, Mia felt panic rising in her chest. "What do you want, Mr. McCreary?" "Information," he replied, his voice dropping lower. "Where is he hiding? How many are with him? Are they planning more attacks?" "There haven't been any attacks," Mia insisted. "Killing cattle and leaving them isn't an Apache raid." "Tell that to the stagecoach passengers robbed yesterday," James countered, "or the settlers found dead last month near the Black Canyon." "That wasn't—" Mia began, then stopped herself, realizing she was revealing too much. James's eyes narrowed. "Wasn't what? Wasn't Apache? How would you know unless you've been in contact with them? With him?" A movement in the brush beyond James caught Mia's eye, a shadow separating itself from the dappled darkness beneath the trees, her breath caught in her throat. James, mistaking her reaction, leaned closer. "Your secret is safe with me, Miss Thompson," he said, his breath hot against her cheek. "For a price." "What price?" Mia asked, her eyes flicking beyond him to where the shadow had solidified into a familiar silhouette. "Marry me," James said simply. "Join our ranches. I get the Thompson water rights. You get my silence about your Apache lover. Your father never needs to know how his daughter betrayed him. Anger flashed through Mia, hot and clarifying. I would rather die than marry a man who uses threats to force a woman's hand. James's face hardened. That can be arranged, he said softly. For both you and your savage. In the next instant, several things happened at once. James was yanked backward, away from Mia. There was a flash of movement, a grunt of pain, and then Lahin stood before her, one hand gripping James by the throat, the other holding a knife to his ribs. "Lahin, no!" Mia cried, lunging forward. Lahin's eyes, normally so calm, blazed with a fury that transformed his face. "He threatened you," he said, his voice low and dangerous. James struggled against Lahin's grip, his face reddening. "Savage," he choked out. "They'll hang you for this." "They would need to catch me first," Lahin replied, pressing the knife tip slightly harder against James's side. "Lahin, please," Mia pleaded, placing a hand on his arm. "This isn't the way. It will only make things worse." For a moment, Lahin seemed beyond reason, his body tense with the need to protect what was his. Then slowly, Mia felt the muscles in his arm relax beneath her touch. He released James, shoving him away. James stumbled, gasping for breath, one hand reaching for the pistol at his hip. Lahin moved like lightning, knocking the gun away before James could draw it. "Walk away," Lahin said, his voice cold. "Now." James straightened, adjusting his collar with shaking hands. His eyes darted between Lahin and Mia, calculation replacing fear. "This isn't over," he said. "Not by a long shot." He backed away, retrieving his fallen pistol, but keeping it holstered. When he reached his horse, he mounted quickly, his gaze never leaving the pair. "Your father will hear about this, Miss Thompson." "What will he hear?" Mia challenged, finding strength in Lahin's presence beside her. "That you threatened me? That you tried to force me to marry you with blackmail?" James's face twisted with anger. "He'll hear that his daughter is still consorting with an Apache. That she's a traitor to her own people." He jerked his horse's head around. "And he'll hear about the cattle and the stagecoach. Your Apache friend here has been busy." "I had nothing to do with either," Lahin said, his voice steady despite the tension Mia could feel radiating from him. "Tell it to the army," James spat, wheeling his horse around and galloping away. As the sound of hoofbeats faded, Mia turned to Lahin, her relief at seeing him alive, warring with new fear. "You have to leave," she said urgently. "He'll bring men back, my father, the ranch hands." "I'm not leaving you," Lahin interrupted, taking her hands in his. "Not again." "You don't understand," Mia insisted. "There's talk of attacks, of Apache raids, dead cattle on our north boundary, a stagecoach robbery. They're blaming your people." Lahin's expression darkened. "It is not us. Someone wants to make it look like Apaches to stir up trouble, to give the army an excuse." "An excuse for what?" "To break the treaty, to push us further from our lands." Lahin's grip tightened on her hands. "That is why I came back, Mia. Not only for you, though my heart has ached for you every day we've been apart, but because my people are in danger." Mia searched his face, seeing the truth written in the lines of worry around his eyes. "What happened 2 years ago?" she asked softly. "Why did you leave?" Pain flashed across Lahin's features. "Your father found out about us. He came to me the night before I disappeared." Mia's breath caught. "What?" "He brought 3 men with guns. Said if I ever saw you again, he would have me killed. Said he would tell the army I had attacked him, that I was a renegade." Lahin's voice was flat, reciting facts that had shaped his existence for 2 years. "He said they would believe him because of who he is and who I am." "My father threatened to kill you?" Mia whispered, the ground seeming to shift beneath her feet. Lahin nodded. "I believed him, but it was not only my life he threatened." He looked away, his jaw clenching. "He said if I did not disappear, you would be sent east to relatives, that you would never see the desert again, never have freedom again." Mia staggered back a step, the revelation hitting her like a physical blow. "He used me against you. I could not be responsible for caging your spirit," Lahin said, his eyes finding hers again. "So I left, joined my cousin's band near the Sierra Madre. Tried to forget you." A sad smile touched his lips. "I failed." "Why come back now? Why risk it?" Mia asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "Because the danger is greater than your father's threats now. Someone is trying to provoke a war, Mia. They are killing and raiding, making it look like Apache work. If they succeed, many will die. My people and yours." He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. "And because living without you was its own kind of death." The touch of his hands on her skin broke something inside Mia, the careful wall she had built to protect herself from more pain. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she leaned into his touch. "I thought you had abandoned me," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I thought what we had meant nothing to you." "It meant everything," Lahin whispered, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "It still does." For a moment, they stood frozen in time, eyes locked, hearts beating in a rhythm that had never truly fallen silent. Then Lahin lowered his head, and his lips found hers in a kiss that bridged the 2 years of separation, of longing, of hurt. Mia's arms wound around his neck as she surrendered to the feelings she had tried so hard to bury. The kiss deepened, desperate and tender all at once, a reaffirmation of what had been and a promise of what could still be. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Mia rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the strong beat of his heart. "What do we do now?" she asked, the reality of their situation crashing back. "McCreary will tell my father he found us together." "Then we must leave," Lahin said simply. "Both of us." Mia looked up at him, startled. "Leave? To go where?" "To find the truth," Lahin replied. "To discover who is really behind these attacks. It is the only way to stop what is coming." His eyes held hers, serious and determined. "Will you come with me, Mia? This time, will you trust me enough to follow where I must go?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with all that had passed and all that might still come. 2 years ago, Mia would have said yes without hesitation, would have followed Lahin anywhere. Now, caution tempered her response. "If I go with you," she said slowly, "I want the truth, all of it. No more secrets, no more disappearing without explanation." "No more secrets," Lahin agreed, taking her hands in his. "But we must go now, before McCreary returns with men." Mia glanced back in the direction of the ranch, the only home she had ever known. Her father, for all his faults, had acted out of what he believed was love. Eleanor would worry. The life she knew, safe and predictable if not entirely fulfilling, waited there. But with Lahin stood the promise of something different. A love that had survived separation and betrayal, a chance to prevent bloodshed, and perhaps a future where she could truly be free. "I'll go with you," she decided, her voice stronger than she felt. "But first I need to get some things from the ranch." Lahin shook his head. "Too dangerous. McCreary could already be there." "Not if we hurry," Mia insisted. "I know a back way through the wash. I need proper clothes, supplies, money." She squeezed his hands. "Trust goes both ways, Lahin." For a moment he hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "We ride together, fast and quiet. Get what you need, nothing more. Then we go." They mounted their horses, Lahin on his paint stallion that had been hidden in the brush, Mia on Silver. As they prepared to ride, Mia glanced once more at Whispering Creek, the place where their story had begun 3 years ago, and where a new chapter was now opening. Whatever came next, she knew one thing with certainty. The ice that had formed around her heart was melting away, revealing the truth that had always lived beneath it. Despite everything, she loved this man, and for that love, she would risk everything to uncover the truth that threatened them both. The journey back to the ranch was tense, every shadow and sound a potential threat. They approached from the south, using the dry creek bed that ran behind the property, a route Mia had often taken as a child when sneaking away to explore. The mid-afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, turning the landscape into a shimmering mirage of heat and dust. "The house looks quiet," Mia whispered, as they paused in the shelter of a stand of mesquite trees. "Farther, and the hands must still be at the north boundary." Lahin's dark eyes scanned the property with the practiced vigilance of a hunter. 3 men, he murmured. 1 by the main corral, 2 near the house. The one with the red shirt is Miguel. Mia nodded. "Eleanor's probably inside. I can get to my room through the back without being seen if Miguel is watching the front." "Too risky," Lahin objected. "If they catch you, if they find out I'm here." "They won't," Mia assured him, though her heart hammered in her chest. "Wait here. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, leave without me." Lahin gripped her arm, his eyes intense. "I will not leave without you." The fierce determination in his voice sent a shiver through Mia, a reminder of the depths of feeling between them. She leaned forward, pressing a quick kiss to his lips. "I'll hurry." Leaving Silver with Lahin, Mia slipped from the cover of the trees and made her way toward the back of the property. She moved from shadow to shadow, grateful for the familiarity of every dip and rise in the terrain. When she reached the small vegetable garden behind the kitchen, she paused, checking for movement at the windows. Seeing none, she darted across the open space and pressed herself against the back wall of the house. The kitchen door was just around the corner. If Eleanor was there, Mia would have to come up with some explanation for her disheveled appearance and her sudden return. Taking a deep breath, Mia peered around the corner. The kitchen door stood slightly ajar, but no sounds came from within. She moved swiftly, slipping inside and freezing as her eyes adjusted to the dimmer light. The kitchen was empty, the remains of lunch still on the table. Mia crept through to the main hallway, listening intently. A murmur of voices drifted from the front room. Eleanor and Miguel, it sounded like. Keeping close to the wall, Mia made her way to the stairs and up to her bedroom on the second floor. Once inside with the door closed behind her, Mia moved with urgent efficiency. She pulled a canvas bag from beneath her bed and began filling it with essentials. 2 changes of clothes, her warmest shawl, a small knife her father had given her on her 16th birthday. From beneath a loose floorboard near the window, she retrieved a small pouch of coins, savings from selling her embroidery in town over the years. She changed quickly into riding clothes, sturdy trousers her father reluctantly allowed her to wear when working with the horses, a practical blouse, and her most comfortable boots. As she worked, her mind raced with questions about what lay ahead. Where would Lahin take her? How would they discover who was behind the attacks? And if they succeeded, what then? A soft knock at her door froze her in place. "Mia?" Eleanor's voice concerned. "Are you in there?" For a brief, wild moment, Mia considered hiding, pretending she wasn't there. But that would only delay the inevitable. Eleanor would look for her elsewhere, raise the alarm when she couldn't be found. "Yes," Mia called, hastily shoving the packed bag under the bed. "I just came back for a clean blouse. I spilled water on mine." The door opened and Eleanor stood there, relief washing over her face. "Thank goodness. When Miguel said he saw someone near the back of the house, I feared—" She trailed off, taking in Mia's changed clothes and flushed face. "What's going on? Your father said you were to stay inside today." Mia hesitated, torn between the need for haste and her genuine affection for her stepmother. Eleanor had never tried to replace Mia's mother, had instead offered friendship and understanding, especially during the dark days after Lahin's disappearance. "I need to go," Mia said finally, deciding that a partial truth was better than a complete lie. "There's something I have to do." Eleanor stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "This has to do with the Apache, doesn't it?" she asked quietly. "With Lahin?" Mia stared at her stepmother in shock. "How do you—" "I'm not blind, Mia," Eleanor said with gentle reproach. "I saw how you changed 3 summers ago, how you would disappear for hours and return with a light in your eyes I'd never seen before. And I saw how that light went out 2 years ago, so suddenly it was like watching a candle flame in a gust of wind." Tears pricked at Mia's eyes, unexpected emotion welling up at being truly seen. "Father never knew that you knew?" Eleanor gave a small, sad smile. "Your father sees what he expects to see, and he never expected his wife to keep secrets from him." She moved closer, taking Mia's hands in hers. "Is he back? Is that why you're running away?" "I'm not running away," Mia protested weakly. "I'm trying to stop something terrible from happening. Someone is making it look like the Apache are attacking settlers and stealing cattle. If it continues, there will be war." Understanding dawned in Eleanor's eyes. "The cattle on the north boundary. The red handprints." Mia nodded. "It wasn't Lahin or his people. They're being framed, and I think I know who's behind it." "McCreary," Eleanor said, surprising Mia again with her perception. "He's been pushing your father to sell the north section for months, offering less than it's worth. And after you refused his son's advances at the spring social—" "It's more than that," Mia said urgently, aware that precious minutes were ticking by. "The McCrearys want the entire valley. Father's ranch, the reservation land, all of it. If they can provoke a conflict between settlers and Apache, The army will drive the tribes out completely, and McCreary will be there to claim the land. Eleanor was silent for a long moment, her expression troubled. "You're sure about this?" "Sure enough to risk everything to stop it," Mia replied, pulling her bag out from under the bed. "Lahin is waiting. We're going to find proof." "Your father will come after you," Eleanor warned. "You know how he is, stubborn, protective." "I know," Mia said softly, "but I have to do this, not just for Lahin, but for what's right." To Mia's surprise, Eleanor nodded, then moved to her dresser and pulled out a small leather-bound book. "My journal," she explained. "I've been keeping notes on McCreary's activities, times he's visited when your father was away, conversations I've overheard, the men he's hired, not ranchers, Mia, gunmen." She pressed the book into Mia's hands. "Take it. It might help." "Why?" Mia asked, stunned by this unexpected ally. Eleanor's face softened. "Because I've seen what love looks like when it's real, Mia. I had it once, briefly, before I met your father, and I see it in your eyes when you speak of Lahin." She squeezed Mia's hands. "Your father is a good man, but he's wrong about this, about you." Impulsively, Mia hugged her stepmother, overcome with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "Go," Eleanor said, stepping back. "I'll tell them I haven't seen you. It will give you a head start." Mia shouldered her bag, tucking the journal inside. At the door, she paused. "Eleanor, if I can't come back—" "You will," Eleanor interrupted firmly. "You'll come back and make your father understand. Both of you will." She gave Mia a gentle push. "Now go, before Miguel decides to check the back of the house again." With a final grateful nod, Mia slipped out of her room and down the back stairs. The kitchen was still empty, and she exited as quietly as she had entered, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The minutes it took to make her way back to where Lahin waited seemed to stretch endlessly. When she finally reached the mesquite grove, relief washed over her at the sight of him standing alert, the reins of both horses in his hand. "You made it," he said, the tension in his shoulders visibly easing. "Eleanor knows," Mia told him as she secured her bag to Silver's saddle, "about us, about what we suspect McCreary is doing. She's going to help us." Lahin's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Your father's wife?" "She's more than that," Mia replied, mounting Silver with practiced ease. "She's my friend." They rode south, away from the ranch, pushing the horses as fast as they dared in the heat. Only when they had put several miles between themselves and the Thompson property did Lahin lead them into a narrow canyon where a small spring provided water and shade. "We'll rest here," he said, dismounting. "Let the horses drink. Then we ride east." "East?" Mia questioned as she slid from Silver's back. "Toward the reservation?" Lahin shook his head. "Not that far east. To Black Mesa. My cousin Nakai Doclini has a camp there, hidden in the high canyons. We will be safe." "Your cousin," Mia repeated, remembering what Lahin had told her. "The one you stayed with after you left." "Yes, he is a medicine man, respected among our people." Lahin led the horses to the spring, allowing them to drink. "He has been gathering evidence of who is really behind the attacks. He sent me to find you because he had a vision." Mia approached, curiosity overcoming her weariness. "A vision? About me?" A small smile touched Lahin's lips. "He said a woman with eyes the color of the sky after rain would stand between two worlds and speak truth that both needed to hear." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I knew immediately who he meant. Mia leaned into his touch, her doubts and fears momentarily quieted by the certainty in his voice. "How far is it to Black Mesa?" 2 days' ride, Lahin replied. "We'll travel at night when it's cooler, rest during the day." As they watered the horses and shared a simple meal of jerky and dried fruit from Lahin's provisions, Mia told him about Eleanor's journal and the information it contained about McCreary. "If he is truly behind this," Lahin said, his expression grave, "he is playing a dangerous game. Many could die for his greed." "We won't let that happen," Mia said with more confidence than she felt. Lahin studied her face, his dark eyes soft with an emotion that made Mia's heart skip. "You have changed," he observed, "stronger now, like steel tempered in fire." "Pain does that," Mia replied quietly. "It either breaks you or forges you into something new." "And love?" Lahin asked, reaching for her hand. "What does love do?" Mia entwined her fingers with his, feeling the roughness of his palm against hers. "Love heals," she said simply, "if you let it." They rested through the hottest part of the day, finding shelter in the shadow of a rock outcropping. Despite the circumstances, despite the danger that surely lay ahead, Mia felt a curious peace settle over her. Here, with Lahin, she was exactly where she was meant to be, following her heart, fighting for justice, embracing a love that had never truly died. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and crimson, they prepared to continue their journey. Mia checked Silver's saddle girth while Lahin scouted the path ahead. The sound of hoofbeats echoing off the canyon walls reached them simultaneously. Lahin was beside Mia in an instant, his body tense with alertness. "How many?" Mia whispered, fear clutching at her throat. Lahin tilted his head, listening intently. "3, maybe 4 riders, coming from the north." "My father," Mia guessed, though it seemed too soon for him to have discovered her absence and tracked them this far. "Or McCreary," Lahin said grimly. "Either way, we cannot be found here. The canyon is too narrow. There's no escape if they box us in." He quickly untied the horses, leading them deeper into the canyon where the path narrowed even further before opening into a series of branching passages. Mia followed, her heart racing as the sound of pursuit grew louder. "Here," Lahin said, indicating a nearly hidden crevice in the rock face. "The horses won't fit, but we can hide. They might pass by." They secured the horses behind a large boulder, hoping the animals would remain quiet. Then Lahin led Mia into the narrow opening, which widened slightly once they were inside. It was cool and dark, barely enough room for the two of them to stand pressed together. "Don't move," Lahin breathed, his body shielding hers as they listened to the approaching riders. The hoofbeats slowed as they entered the canyon. Male voices echoed off the stone walls, though the words were indistinct. Mia held her breath, her body rigid with tension. Lahin's heartbeat was steady against her palm where it rested on his chest. "Tracks lead this way," a voice called closer now. Mia recognized it with a chill. James McCreary. "Could be anyone," another man replied. "Lot of travelers use this canyon." "2 horses," James insisted. "One shod in the Thompson pattern. I'd recognize it anywhere." "You sure this is worth it, McCreary?" a third voice asked. "Thompson's going to be mighty angry if he finds out we're chasing his daughter." "Thompson won't know until it's too late," James replied, his voice cold. "By then, we'll have the Apache, and his daughter will be grateful I saved her from the savage, or she'll be dead alongside him. Either way works for me." Mia's blood ran cold at the casual cruelty in his tone. Beside her, Lahin's body tensed, though his face remained impassive in the dim light filtering through the crevice. The riders moved deeper into the canyon, the sound of their voices fading slightly. Mia allowed herself a small breath of relief. Then Silver nickered softly from her hiding place. "Did you hear that?" James's voice, sharp with excitement. "Over there, behind those rocks!" "Run!" Lahin whispered urgently, pushing Mia toward the back of the crevice. "There's another way out. A small passage. Go!" "Not without you," Mia protested. "I'll be right behind you," Lahin promised. "But you must go first. The passage is narrow." With one last desperate look at him, Mia turned and felt her way deeper into the darkness. Behind her, she heard Lahin moving stones, creating an obstacle at the entrance to delay pursuit. The passage narrowed until she had to turn sideways to squeeze through, the rough rock scraping her arms and face. Just as panic began to rise at the confinement, the passage widened, and Mia found herself in a small grotto, dimly lit by a crack in the ceiling far above. Water trickled down one wall, collecting in a small pool. "Lahin?" she called softly, turning back toward the passage. No answer came. Seconds stretched into minutes as Mia waited, straining to hear any sound from the passage. Then, faintly, she heard the report of a gun, followed by shouts and another shot. "No," she whispered, her blood turning to ice. "No, no, no." Fighting her instinct to rush back through the passage, Mia forced herself to think clearly. If Lahin was hurt, or she couldn't bring herself to complete the thought, then charging back would only get her captured too. She had to find another way out, had to get help. The grotto seemed to have no exit other than the passage she had entered through. Mia examined the walls frantically, looking for any opening, any possibility of escape. The water had to come from somewhere, had to go somewhere. Following the trickle to where it disappeared into a narrow gap at the base of the far wall, Mia knelt and peered through. A faint light showed on the other side. Daylight. The opening was small, barely large enough for a child to crawl through, let alone a grown woman, but it was her only chance. Setting aside her bag, keeping only the knife and Eleanor's journal, Mia lay flat on her stomach and began to inch her way into the gap. The space was tight, the stone cold and damp against her body. Each movement forward was a struggle, the rough rock scraping her skin through her clothes. Halfway through, the passage narrowed further, and for one terrifying moment, Mia thought she was trapped, unable to go forward, unable to retreat. Panic clawed at her throat, threatening to overwhelm her. Then she remembered Lahin's words from years ago, when he had taught her to navigate the desert. The earth does not trap those who respect it. Listen to what it tells you. Move with it, not against it. Forcing herself to breathe slowly, Mia relaxed her muscles, allowing her body to settle slightly. Then, with a careful twist of her shoulders, she found the angle that allowed her to continue forward, inch by painful inch. When she finally emerged on the other side, she lay gasping in the late afternoon sun, her clothes soaked, her skin bruised and scraped. She was on a narrow ledge above another section of the canyon, perhaps 50 feet from the ground below. The sound of voices echoed up from somewhere to her left, McCreary and his men searching. There was no sign of Lahin, no way to know if he had escaped or been captured, or worse. Grief and fear threatened to paralyze her, but Mia pushed them aside. She had to keep moving, had to reach Black Mesa, find Lahin's cousin. The journal in her pocket might hold the evidence they needed to stop McCreary's scheme, and if Lahin was still alive, that was where he would go. Looking around, Mia spotted a series of ledges descending toward the canyon floor in a rough natural staircase. It was a risky climb, but less dangerous than remaining where she was. As she began her descent, moving carefully from ledge to ledge, Mia's mind raced with possibilities. If McCreary had Lahin, what would he do with him? Take him to the authorities? Kill him outright? And what story would he tell back at the ranch? That Lahin had kidnapped her? That she had gone willingly? By the time she reached the canyon floor, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape. Mia oriented herself, finding the eastern horizon where the first stars were beginning to appear. Black Mesa lay in that direction, according to Lahin. 2 days' ride on horseback, but how long on foot? Too long, she realized with a sinking heart. Without water, without a horse, the desert would claim her long before she reached her destination. A soft sound behind her made Mia whirl, knife in hand. From the gathering shadows, a horse emerged, silver, still saddled, reins trailing on the ground. The mare must have escaped during the confrontation and wandered through the canyon. Silver, Mia breathed, relief making her dizzy. She approached slowly, soothing the nervous animal with soft words. Good girl, clever girl. With Silver, Mia had a chance. She could ride through the night, following the stars as Lahin had taught her. If luck was with her, she might reach Black Mesa by nightfall tomorrow. As she mounted, a darker thought intruded. If Silver had escaped, what of Lahin's horse? And what of Lahin himself? Had he managed to flee, or was he even now in McCreary's hands, facing who knew what cruelty? The uncertainty was a physical pain in her chest, but Lahin had trusted her with this mission, had believed she could help save his people. She would not fail him now. With one last look at the canyon where she had last seen him, Mia turned Silver's head eastward and urged her into a steady trot. The stars emerged one by one above her, ancient patterns guiding her across the darkening landscape toward a destiny she could not yet imagine. Behind her, the land fell away into shadow. Before her lay uncertainty, danger, and perhaps heartbreak, but also truth, justice, and the chance to honor a love that had survived against all odds. Mia Thompson rode into the gathering night, no longer the sheltered rancher's daughter, no longer the betrayed lover nursing a frozen heart. She rode as a woman with purpose, with fire instead of ice in her veins, determined to write her own ending to this story, an ending where love and truth prevailed over hatred and lies. And somewhere in the vast Arizona night, she had to believe Lahin was still alive, still fighting, still finding his way back to her, as he had always done, as he would always do, across any distance, against any odds. The desert at night was another world, vast, silent, alive with subtle movements and ancient rhythms. Mia rode steadily eastward, guided by the stars that Lahin had taught her to read 3 summers ago. Silver moved with surprising energy despite the earlier exertion, as if the horse too sensed the urgency of their journey. By dawn, Mia had covered considerable ground, the terrain gradually changing as they approached the foothills that would eventually lead to Black Mesa. When the first light broke over the horizon, she found a sheltered ravine with a trickle of water seeping from the rocks, enough to sustain both her and Silver through the heat of the day. As she settled in the shade of a sandstone overhang, exhaustion finally overcame Mia. Her last thoughts before sleep claimed her were of Lahin, his voice, his touch, the unfinished promise between them, and a prayer, silent but fervent, that he had somehow escaped McCreary's men. Dreams came in fragments, her father's face twisted with anger, Eleanor pressing the journal into her hands, Lahin's eyes as he urged her to run. Then, more distant memories. The first time Lahin had taken her hand by Whispering Creek, the taste of his lips against hers, the way the world had seemed to hold its breath when they lay together beneath the stars, skin to skin, heart to heart. She woke with tears on her cheeks and determination in her heart. The sun was past its zenith, beginning its slow descent toward the western horizon. Time to move again. As she prepared to continue the journey, Mia opened Eleanor's journal, hoping to find information that might help her convince Lahin's people of McCreary's treachery. The neat handwriting filled page after page with observations, conversations overheard, visitors to the McCreary ranch noted with dates and times. Eleanor had been more observant than anyone had given her credit for. One entry from 3 months earlier caught Mia's eye. April 12th. McCreary visited again while Samuel was in Prescott. Overheard him speaking with a man called Hardin about making examples at Black Canyon. Said the army would believe anything if it involved Apache savages. Mentioned payment in gold and land once the territory was cleared. Samuel must be told, but how can I prove what I only overheard? And another, more recent, June 30th. James McCreary, watching Mia at the social with troubling intensity. Later heard him tell his father, "Thompson's daughter is the key. Either she marries me willing or unwilling, or she becomes part of the problem." What did he mean must warn Mia to be careful. The entries confirmed what Mia had already suspected. The McCrearys were deliberately staging attacks to blame on the Apache, with the ultimate goal of driving them from the territory completely, and somehow she had become entangled in their scheme. But the journal alone wasn't enough. She needed more concrete evidence, something that would convince not just Lahin's people, but also the territorial authorities, perhaps even her father. With renewed determination, Mia mounted Silver and continued eastward. The landscape became more rugged as they climbed higher, the vegetation changing from sparse desert scrub to juniper and pinon pine. By nightfall, she could see the distinctive shape of Black Mesa on the horizon, a dark silhouette against the star-filled sky. She rode through the second night, pushing Silver as much as she dared. As dawn broke, the massive form of Black Mesa loomed before her, its flat top and steep sides rising from the surrounding plateau like a fortress. But how to find Lahin's cousin in this vast landscape? Lahin had spoken of hidden canyons, of places where his people had taken refuge from those who would hunt them. Mia studied the terrain, looking for signs, for anything that might guide her. Near the base of the mesa, she spotted a thin plume of smoke rising from what appeared to be a narrow cleft in the rock face. Heart pounding, Mia urged Silver toward it. As they drew closer, she saw that the cleft widened into a canyon entrance, partially concealed by boulders and scrub growth. Approaching cautiously, Mia suddenly found herself surrounded by 4 Apache warriors who seemed to materialize from the very rocks. Their faces were painted for war, their rifles aimed steadily at her heart. "I seek Nakaida Clini," Mia called out in the Apache language Lahin had taught her, the words awkward on her tongue but recognizable. "I bring news from Lahin." The warriors exchanged glances at Lahin's name. One stepped forward, his gaze stern beneath the painted symbols on his forehead. "Where is Lahin?" he demanded in accented English. Mia's throat tightened with emotion. "Captured perhaps by men who wish harm to your people. Men who are falsely blaming the Apache for attacks on settlers. The warrior studied her face, searching for deception. "You are the woman with sky eyes," he said finally. "The one he spoke of." "Yes," Mia replied, relief washing through her. "Please, I need to speak with Nakaidoklini. There isn't much time." After a brief consultation among themselves, the warriors motioned for Mia to dismount. One took Silver's reins, while another gestured for Mia to follow him into the canyon. The narrow passage opened into a hidden valley nestled against the base of the mesa. Here, a small encampment of perhaps 30 people had established themselves, women cooking over small fires, children playing quietly, men crafting weapons or standing guard. All activity ceased as Mia was led through the camp, curious eyes following her progress. At the far end of the valley, beneath an overhanging rock shelf, sat an older man cross-legged before a small fire. His long hair, streaked with grey, was bound with a simple band, and his face bore the lines of one who had seen much in his lifetime. This, Mia knew instinctively, was Nakaidoklini. "The woman Lahin spoke of," the warrior announced, then withdrew, leaving Mia standing before the medicine man. Nakaidoklini raised his eyes to hers, studying her with an intensity that seemed to look beyond her physical presence into something deeper. "Sit," he finally said, gesturing to a place across the fire from him. Mia folded herself onto the ground, suddenly acutely aware of her disheveled appearance, and the days of travel evident in her dust-streaked face and clothing. But the medicine man's gaze held no judgment, only a deep, penetrating curiosity. "Where is my cousin?" he asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. "We were ambushed in a canyon 2 days' ride from here," Mia explained, her voice catching. "Men led by James McCreary, a rancher's son. Lahin helped me escape, but I don't know what happened to him afterward. I heard gunshots." Nakaidoklini's expression remained impassive, though something flickered in his eyes at the mention of McCreary. "And you came here alone across the desert?" "Lahin told me this is where we were headed," Mia replied. "He said you had evidence about who is really responsible for the attacks blamed on your people." The medicine man nodded slowly. "The one called McCreary sends men dressed as Apache to kill settlers, to steal cattle, to burn homes." His mouth tightened with controlled anger. "Then he tells the army it is us, so they will drive us from our last lands." "I know," Mia said urgently. "My stepmother has been keeping a record." She pulled Eleanor's journal from her pocket. Dates, conversations she overheard, plans for attacks, but it's not enough to convince the authorities. "No," Nakaidoklini agreed. "The white man's law requires white man's evidence." "What evidence do you have?" Mia asked. Instead of answering directly, Nakaidoklini called out in Apache. A young man appeared, listened to the medicine man's instructions, then disappeared into one of the shelters. He returned moments later with a bundle wrapped in deerskin. Nakaidoklini carefully unwrapped the bundle, revealing a silver pocket watch, a U.S. Army button, and most damning of all, a letter written on McCreary Ranch stationery. He passed the items to Mia. The letter was brief but explicit, instructing a man called Hardin to make it look convincing at Black Canyon, to leave Apache signs, and promising payment upon completion. It was signed by Edward McCreary, James's father. "Where did you get these?" Mia asked, her heart racing at the significance of what she held. "From the men who attacked the settlement at Black Canyon," Nakaidoklini replied. 3 men dressed as Apache, but with blue eyes and pale skin beneath the paint. My warrior questioned them before they died. Mia's mouth went dry at the implication, but she understood the harsh justice of the frontier. This letter, combined with Eleanor's journal, might be enough to convince the territorial governor, perhaps even the army. "Perhaps," Nakaidoklini agreed. "But first, we must find Lahin." The simple statement, spoken with such certainty, sent hope surging through Mia. "You believe he's alive?" A small smile touched the medicine man's lips. "I would know if my cousin's spirit had left this world. No, he lives, but he is in danger." He studied Mia thoughtfully. "You love him?" It wasn't a question, but Mia answered anyway. "Yes, despite everything, despite the 2 years apart, yes." Nakaidoklini nodded, as if confirming something he had already known. "And what of your father, your people? Are you prepared to stand against them for this love?" "My father is a good man who has made mistakes," Mia said carefully. But justice matters more than blind loyalty. Truth matters more than comfortable lies. She met the medicine man's gaze steadily. I will stand for what is right, no matter who stands against me. Something like approval flickered in Nakaidoklini's eyes. Rest now, he said, rising to his feet with fluid grace despite his age. Tomorrow, we will find Lahin and expose the truth to all who have ears to hear it. Mia was shown to a small shelter where she could wash and rest. The women of the camp brought her food, a stew of rabbit and wild vegetables that revived her strength, and clean clothes to replace her travel-worn garments. As night fell over the hidden valley, Mia stood at the entrance to the shelter, gazing at the stars that had guided her here. The same stars that she and Lahin had lain beneath, dreaming impossible dreams that somehow, against all odds, might yet come true. We will find you, she whispered to the night sky, a promise carried on the desert wind. Hold on, my love, just hold on. Dawn had barely touched the eastern horizon when Nakaidoklini appeared at Mia's shelter. It is time, he said simply. Outside, Mia found 20 warriors prepared for travel, their faces painted, weapons ready. Silva had been tended to, her coat brushed, her strength renewed like Mia's own. Where are we going? Mia asked as she mounted. To the place where 3 waters meet, Nakaidoklini replied, swinging onto his own horse with remarkable agility. The McCrearys have a camp there, a place where they plan their false raids. The party moved out in silence, traveling swiftly across terrain that would have been challenging for Mia alone, but seemed to present no difficulty to her Apache guides. By mid-morning, they had descended from the mesa into rolling hills covered with juniper and scrub oak. They paused on a ridge overlooking a verdant valley, where 3 streams converged into one larger watercourse. Near this junction stood a small cabin, a corral with several horses, and what appeared to be a storage shed. Smoke rose from the cabin's chimney, indicating occupation. From their vantage point, Mia could see 4 men moving around the property. None were immediately recognizable as James McCreary or his father. Lahin, she whispered to Nakaidoklini, who was studying the scene through a brass spyglass, likely taken from some unfortunate traveler in the past. Not outside, the medicine man replied. Perhaps within. One of the scouts returned from a closer reconnaissance, reporting quietly to Nakaidoklini in Apache. The medicine man's expression darkened. What is it? Mia asked urgently. More men coming, Nakaidoklini said. Many horses, perhaps McCreary and others. He handed Mia the spyglass. Look to the west. Mia focused the glass on the direction indicated and saw a cloud of dust approaching, at least a dozen riders moving at a steady pace toward the cabin. We must act before they arrive, Nakaidoklini decided. My warriors will take the men at the cabin. You will stay here until it is safe. No, Mia protested. If Lahin is there, I'm coming with you. Nakaidoklini studied her face for a moment, then nodded. Stay close to me. Do exactly as I say. The Apache warriors moved down the ridge with a stealth born of generations living in harmony with the land. Mia followed Nakaidoklini, her heart pounding, her senses heightened by fear and hope. They had nearly reached the edge of the clearing when a shot rang out, followed by a shout of alarm from the cabin. Their approach had been discovered. What followed was a blur of action. The Apache warriors fired on the men who scrambled for cover, while Nakaidoklini led Mia in a circuitous route toward the back of the cabin. Gunfire erupted from within, splintering wood near their heads as they reached the relative safety of the cabin's rear wall. There is a window, Nakaidoklini said, pointing to a small opening high on the wall. Too small for me, but perhaps... Mia understood immediately. With Nakaidoklini providing a foothold, she climbed up and peered cautiously through the grimy glass. The cabin's interior was dim, but she could make out 2 men crouched near the front windows, firing at the attacking warriors. And there, in the far corner, a figure slumped against the wall, hands bound, head bowed. Lahin. He's there, Mia whispered urgently. He's alive, but tied up. Can you break the window quietly? Nakaidoklini asked. Mia examined the frame. The glass was set in a wooden sash that had rotted with age and weather. I think so, she replied, pulling the knife from her belt. Working carefully, she pried at the wood until the entire sash came loose in her hands. Setting it aside, she prepared to climb through the narrow opening. Be careful, Nakaidoklini warned. The men are distracted now, but if they see you... Mia nodded, understanding the risk. Then, gathering her courage, she pulled herself up and through the window, dropping as quietly as possible onto the dirt floor within. The men at the front were still focused on the attack outside, shouting to each other about holding out until McCreary arrived. They didn't notice Mia as she crept along the wall toward Lahin. When she reached him, her heart nearly stopped. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, dried blood crusted at the corner of his mouth. His shirt was torn, revealing more bruises and what appeared to be burn marks on his chest. "Lahin," she whispered, touching his face with trembling fingers. "Lahin, it's me." His good eye opened slowly, disbelief giving way to recognition. "Mia," he breathed, his voice hoarse. "How?" "No time," she said, already working at the ropes binding his wrists. "Can you walk?" A ghost of his familiar smile touched his battered lips. "For you, I can fly." The ropes fell away and Mia helped Lahin to his feet. He swayed slightly, steadying himself against the wall. "The window?" he asked, understanding their escape route without being told. "Yes. Nakaidoklini is outside." At the mention of his cousin, Lahin's eye widened. "He came?" "We all came for you," Mia said simply. "Now let's go before... Well, look what we have here." The voice froze Mia in place. Slowly, she turned to find James McCreary standing in the doorway of a small back room she hadn't noticed, a pistol pointed directly at her heart. "Miss Thompson," he said, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "How convenient. I was beginning to think we'd have to hunt you down, but here you are, walking right into our arms." His gaze shifted to Lahin. "And trying to help your savage escape, I see." "It's over, James," Mia said, stepping slightly in front of Lahin. "We know everything. About your father's plans, about the fake raids, about the murders you've committed." James's smile faltered slightly. "You don't know anything." "We have proof," Mia countered. "Your father's letter to Hardin about Black Canyon, my stepmother's journal documenting your family's activities, the testimonies of your hired men who were captured." Uncertainty flickered in James's eyes, quickly replaced by cold calculation. "It doesn't matter what you think you know. No one will believe you over us. Not when they find 2 bodies in a burned-out cabin, a tragic victim of Apache savagery and her attacker, killed by brave settlers defending themselves." "You would murder an innocent woman to protect your family's scheme?" Lahin asked, his voice strong despite his injuries. James shrugged. "She stopped being innocent the moment she chose you over her own kind." His finger tightened on the trigger. "Nothing personal, Miss Thompson. Just business." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As James began to squeeze the trigger, a shadow appeared at the window behind him. Nakaidoklini, who had found another way into the cabin. The medicine man's arm whipped forward, a knife flashing through the air to bury itself in James's shoulder. James cried out, his shot going wild as he staggered forward. Lahin moved with surprising speed, despite his injuries, lunging to tackle James to the ground. The pistol skittered across the dirt floor as the 2 men grappled. Mia dived for the weapon, her fingers closing around the grip, just as one of the men from the front of the cabin rushed to investigate the commotion. Without thinking, she swung the pistol up and fired. The man fell, clutching his leg where her bullet had struck. The remaining man, seeing the battle turning against him, threw down his weapon and raised his hands in surrender. Outside, the gunfire had ceased. Nakaidoklini called out in Apache, and 2 warriors appeared at the front door, their rifles trained on the surrendering man. Lahin had subdued James, who lay pinned beneath him, blood seeping from his shoulder wound. "It's over," Lahin said, his voice weary but triumphant. "Your father's scheme ends here. You think this changes anything?" James spat, his face twisted with hatred. "The army won't believe a bunch of savages and a woman who's betrayed her own people." "They will believe this," came a new voice from the doorway. Mia turned, shock coursing through her at the sight of her father standing there, flanked by Eleanor and the territorial marshal. "Father?" she gasped. Samuel Thompson stepped into the cabin, his face grim as he surveyed the scene. His eyes lingered on Lahin's battered form, then moved to his daughter, the pistol still clutched in her hand. "Eleanor showed me her journal," he said simply. "Told me everything. About McCreary's scheme. About you and—" He hesitated, glancing at Lahin. And about what I did 2 years ago. The marshal moved past Samuel to take charge of James McCreary. We've been suspicious of the McCrearys for months, he explained, as he bound James's wrists. Attacks that didn't fit Apache patterns, witnesses describing white men with painted faces. But we needed proof. He nodded to Eleanor. Your stepmother's journal was the final piece. And we intercepted Edward McCreary and his men on the trail, Samuel added. They're in custody as well. As the marshal led James away, cursing and threatening, Samuel approached Mia and Lahin. For a long moment, he stood looking at them, something like resignation mingling with reluctant acceptance in his weathered face. You were right, he finally said to Mia. About McCreary, about the attacks. He took a deep breath. And I was wrong. About many things. Mia stared at her father, hardly able to believe what she was hearing. You came looking for me. Samuel nodded. Eleanor convinced me. Said if I didn't help find you, I'd lose you forever. His gaze shifted to Lahin. She also said some things about love that made me remember what it was like when I first brought your mother west. Before Mia could respond, hoofbeats sounded outside, and an army officer appeared in the doorway. Marshal, we've secured the perimeter. No sign of the elder McCreary trying to double back. The officer stopped short when he saw the gathering inside the cabin, his hand moving instinctively to his sidearm at the sight of the Apache warriors. At ease, Lieutenant, the marshal called. These men are witnesses, not hostiles. The lieutenant relaxed slightly, though his expression remained wary. Sir, we found documents in McCreary's saddlebags, orders to his men, records of payments, even a map marking locations of planned Apache raids. He glanced at Nakaido and the other warriors. It seems there's been a grave miscarriage of justice. One we intend to rectify, the marshal assured him. I'll need statements from everyone here, especially you, miss, he added, addressing Mia. And your Apache friends, if they're willing? Nakaido stepped forward, his bearing dignified despite the tension of the moment. We will tell what we know, he said in clear English. For too long our words have been like smoke, disappearing before the white man's eyes. Perhaps now they will see clearly. As the various parties began to sort themselves out, Mia turned to Lahin, who was being tended by one of his people. His injuries, while painful, appeared less severe than she had feared. You found my cousin, he said softly, reaching for her hand. You brought help. I couldn't give up, Mia replied, tears threatening as the reality of their reunion sank in. Not again. Not ever again. Lahin's fingers tightened around hers. I told you once that your spirit belonged wherever it found freedom, he reminded her. Is that still with me? Always, Mia whispered, uncaring of the eyes that might be watching. My spirit, my heart, my life, they're all yours if you want them. The smile that transformed Lahin's battered face was like sunrise breaking over the desert, slow, radiant, full of promise. I want them, he assured her. Today, tomorrow, for all the days we have. A discreet cough interrupted their moment. Mia looked up to find her father standing awkwardly nearby, Eleanor at his side. There's going to be a lot to sort out, Samuel said, his voice gruff but not unkind. The territorial governor will want to speak with all of us. There'll be hearings, testimonies. And after that? Mia asked, her hand still firmly in Lahin's. Samuel and Eleanor exchanged glances. After that, Eleanor said gently, we hope you'll both come home. Home? Mia repeated, surprised. To the ranch? Samuel nodded, his expression softening as he looked at his daughter. It's a big place, room enough for family to grow. He glanced at Lahin, making an obvious effort. Both our families, if that's what you want. Mia felt tears spill onto her cheeks as she understood what her father was offering, not just acceptance, but a future. A place where she and Lahin could build a life together, a bridge between two worlds. Thank you, Father, she managed through her tears. Samuel cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the emotion of the moment. Yes, well, we should see to your young man's injuries properly, and you look like you could use a decent meal yourself. As her father and Eleanor moved away to speak with the marshal, Mia turned back to Lahin. Did you hear that? She asked, wonder in her voice. He called you family. I heard, Lahin replied, his good eye bright with something that might have been tears or might have been the reflection of the future opening before them. And I heard him call me, your young man. Mia laughed softly, the sound releasing the last of the tension she had carried for so long. "You are, you know. Mine. As you are mine," Lahin agreed, pulling her gently closer. The woman with sky eyes who stood between two worlds and spoke truth that both needed to hear. "Nakaido Clini told you about his vision?" "He didn't need to," Lahin said, his voice tender. "I've known who you are from the first moment I saw you at Whispering Creek, known what we could be together." Outside, the sun had begun its descent toward the western horizon, painting the landscape in gold and amber. Inside, surrounded by the unlikely alliance of Apache warriors, territorial lawmen, and her own family, Mia found herself at the center of a moment that felt like both an ending and a beginning. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be prejudice to overcome, wounds to heal, trust to rebuild. But standing there with Lahin's hand in hers, Mia knew with bone-deep certainty that they would face it all together. That the love which had survived separation, betrayal and violence had been tempered like steel, made stronger by the very fires meant to destroy it. And in that moment, Mia understood what Lahin had tried to teach her 3 summers ago beside Whispering Creek, that freedom wasn't found in a place, but in the courage to follow one's heart against all odds, that home wasn't confined by fence lines or boundary markers, but existed wherever love took root and flourished. As if reading her thoughts, Lahin squeezed her hand. "Together," he said quietly. "Together," Mia echoed, her heart full of promise. "Always." Epilogue, Arizona Territory, 1874. The golden light of late afternoon streamed through the windows of the ranch house, illuminating the scene within. Mia sat in a rocking chair beside the hearth, a small bundle cradled in her arms. The infant girl, barely 3 months old, slept peacefully, one tiny copper-skinned hand curled against her mother's breast. "She sleeps like you," Lahin observed from where he stood in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the bright day outside. "Deeply, completely, as if the world's troubles cannot touch her." Mia smiled up at her husband, love warming her gaze. "She has your strength, though. Did you see how she held her head up yesterday? Eleanor says she's never seen a baby so young with such determination." Lahin crossed the room to kneel beside the chair, gently touching their daughter's dark hair. "Elena Thompson has the best of both our worlds," he said softly, using the name they had chosen to honor both Mia's stepmother and Lahin's mother. The past 2 years had brought changes none could have imagined on that fateful day at Three Waters. The McCrearys had been tried and convicted of multiple crimes, their vast holdings broken up and redistributed. Some of the land had been returned to the Apache, establishing a new boundary for the reservation that included sacred sites long contested. Samuel Thompson, to everyone's surprise, had emerged as an unlikely advocate for peace between settlers and the native peoples. His testimony against the McCrearys, combined with his public acknowledgement of his Apache son-in-law, had given him a unique position of influence in territorial politics. The Thompson Ranch had expanded, not through aggression or displacement, but through partnership. Nakaido Clini and a small band of his people had settled on the northern section, teaching traditional methods of living in harmony with the desert, while learning new techniques for raising cattle and managing water resources. And at the heart of it all, in the ranch house that had once seemed like a cage to a young woman with dreams too big to contain, Mia and Lahin had created a home where both their traditions were honored, where their love had room to grow, and where their daughter would inherit a legacy of courage, truth, and the power of love to heal ancient wounds. "Your father is coming for supper," Lahin reminded Mia, his hand resting on her shoulder. "And Nakaido Clini, they're still arguing about that irrigation system?" Mia laughed softly, careful not to disturb the sleeping infant. "They enjoy the argument more than they would agreement. It gives them both something to look forward to." Lahin's smile acknowledged the truth of this observation. "And Eleanor, will she join us?" "Of course. She's bringing that new teacher from town, the one who wants to start a school that will welcome both settler and Apache children." Mia's expression grew thoughtful. "Things are changing, Lahin. Slowly, imperfectly, but they're changing. Because of people like you," he said, his voice warm with pride. "People who refuse to accept that the world must remain divided." Mia shook her head slightly. "Because of us. What we fought for, what we build together every day." The baby stirred, tiny eyelids fluttering open to reveal eyes the deep blue of her mother's, eyes that would one day, perhaps, see a world where the divisions that had nearly destroyed her parents' love existed only in stories told around evening fires. "She has your eyes," Lahin said, wonder in his voice, though he had made the same observation countless times since Elena's birth. "The sky after rain," Mia replied with a smile, remembering Nakaidoklini's vision. "A new sky for a new day." Outside, the sun continued its eternal journey across the vast Arizona sky, its light touching equally on all the land below. The ranch house where a family of two worlds made their home, the new Apache settlement to the north, the town growing slowly in the east, the ancient desert that had witnessed countless human dramas, yet remained ever itself, harsh, beautiful, enduring. And within the warm circle of lamplight, Mia and Lahin bent their heads over their daughter, their shadows merging into one as the day faded into evening, their love a shelter against the gathering darkness, their joined hands a bridge between past and future, between separation and belonging, between all that had been lost and all that had been found in each other's arms. The end. Dear listener, when the night feels too vast and the silence too heavy, remember that you are never truly alone. Like Mia crossing that seemingly endless desert, guided only by stars and hope, you too have an inner compass that never fails, even when you can't feel its pull. There is a strength in you that has never been measured, a resilience that has weathered storms you thought would break you. Yet here you are, still breathing, still listening, still open to the whispers of possibility that drift through your window with the evening breeze. The world may tell you that some boundaries cannot be crossed, that some differences cannot be bridged, but your heart knows better. In those quiet moments when you're truly honest with yourself, you feel it, that universal truth that transcends all the artificial lines we draw between us. Love doesn't recognize our human categories, it simply flows where it belongs, like water finding its way through desert stone. Tonight, as you lay your head down, release the weight of expectations, both others and your own. Let your shoulders soften, let your jaw unclench. The protection you seek isn't found in armor, but in surrender to the rhythm of your own heartbeat, steady and true since before you drew your first breath. The story you just heard isn't just about two lovers from different worlds. It's about the courage to write your own ending when the world has already decided what your story should be. That same courage lives in you, dormant perhaps, but never extinguished. May your dreams be a sanctuary where no judgment follows you. May your sleep be the deep, healing kind that knits together the frayed edges of your spirit. And may you wake with the quiet certainty that today, just like Mia and Lahin, you can choose love over fear and connection over division. You are held in the palm of something greater than yourself. Rest in that knowledge tonight, and rise tomorrow remembering that the most radical act of courage is sometimes simply being true to the wisdom of your own heart. With all our gratitude, Wild West Whispers team. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. If Mia and Lahin's story moved you, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing this video with someone who believes in the power of love across all boundaries. From the bottom of our hearts, your support helps keep this channel alive and growing. It inspires us to keep writing and producing more heartfelt, original stories filled with love, redemption, and unexpected twists. At the end of this video, you'll see a suggested story from our channel. Click and let yourself be surprised by another emotional journey just like this one. Thank you for being here. Wild West Whispers team.